Hello and welcome back to another episode at my Drum Teacher React series. Today my plan is to do something totally different. Normally I don't criticize other drummers too much in my Drum Teacher React series, but this time I'm gonna do exactly that. I'm gonna focus on mistakes and weak spots in this guy's drumming. Yes, I'm gonna discuss my own skills today, and the reason is that I want to tell you where my weak spots were drumming wise back in the days and what I did to get rid of them. So this video we're gonna watch right now was recorded in 2011, almost 8 years ago. This was my second US tour with Belphegor and I still had a lot to learn. I was extremely nervous that night. It was a big honor for me that the guys from Sick Drummer magazine showed up at our show and were willing to record my drumming and share it on their channel. So no second chances and no second takes that night. Alright, let's start right away. Alright, let's talk about my hand technique for a little bit. To be precise, let's talk about the open-close technique I used back in the days with my right hand on the hi-hat. First, I have to tell you that I use the open-close technique, not the push-pull. By that I mean that I'm consciously generating the first stroke by a wrist down motion, opening my fingers, and then generating the second stroke by a snap of my fingers. It's important to mention that I just used this technique with my right hand on the hi-hat. I never used it with my left hand. We're going to discuss my left hand technique a little later. So the big advantage you get when using the open close on the hi-hat is that you get more power and it's way easier to play for longer periods of time since you're dividing the two strokes between different muscle groups. So the first stroke is generated by your wrist and the second stroke is generated by your fingers. And that's a big advantage, especially since your hi-hats don't offer as much rebound as your snare drum or your right cymbal, for example. One big disadvantage of this technique, and that was the main reason why I stopped working on it, is the following. The open-close technique is perfect if you want to accent every other note just like this. So this way every accent I play is performed by my wrist, but as soon as I switch to accents every third stroke, the accent has to switch between the wrist stroke and the finger up stroke. This motion feels totally counterintuitive, and so this limits me to accents with my wrists if I want to use that technique. That's why I've decided to stop working on that technique altogether. I know that there are also some variations of that technique to get accents every third stroke, like this one. Down, tap, up, down, tap, up. But this also never felt very natural to me, and I don't want to waste time thinking about what technique I have to use next to get this 2-note or 3-note accent grouping down. Alright, let's continue. Now let's talk about my pedals and pedal settings for a bit. Back in the days I used Axis A longboards with a medium spring tension, VDL all the way back, Pearl quad beaters and Axis E-kit triggers. One other thing that is kind of interesting is that when I started using Axis pedals I always had the regular silver version. But at one point I saw George from Nile who had these black Axis A longboards and I always wanted to get those. So in 2013 I switched to the black Axis longboards and I have to tell you that I didn't like them at all. You know, every time I stepped on stage with Belphegor, I had no lights back at my drum kit, so everything was pretty dark. And this was never a problem with my silver Axis pedals, but with the black pedals it was hard to find the perfect foot position. Of course, it's not difficult to place your foot on the pedal even if it's dark on stage, but every time I started playing I didn't see where my foot was placed exactly. and I never had that problem with my regular silver axis pedals. Alright, now let's continue. Now let's discuss my foot technique and how it changed over time. Back in the days, I used the ankle technique for everything that's faster than 140 beats per minute. So for slow tempo up to 140 BPM, I used a full leg motion, so just hip flexors. And from 140 to up tempos, I used the ankle technique, which is just generated by my calf muscles. The great advantage you get when you already switch from full leg motion to just using your calf muscles at a medium tempo, like 140 BPM, is that you are able to use the exact same technique and exact same muscle groups at 140, 150, 160 and so on up until 210 BPM. All I do at those tempos is the following. I relax my hip flexors and just push down with the ball of my foot. And each of those strokes is just generated by my calf muscles. My shin muscles are not involved in this motion. So here's an example of the ankle technique starting at 140 beats per minute. Alright, let's continue. Another funny background story. Right before the show I told our frontman Helmut that this show is really important to me because the guys from Sick Drum magazine would record some of the songs of that show. So all I asked him to do is to not insult anyone on stage and to not do anything crazy during that gig. And as it turned out, the whole set went really well. But at that one song the guys from Sick Drum recorded, he had to say the phrase San Francisco, f*** you. Anyways, good times. To be honest, I had the time of my life on that tour, especially with this lineup, with Helmut on vocals and guitar, Serpent on bass, and my dear friend Bernd on guitar as well. Bernd lives in Vienna, and till this day he's one of my closest friends, so I'm forever grateful for my time in Belfegor. If I would have never played drums for them, I also would have probably never met this guy. Okay, let's continue. Now let's talk about the technique I use with my left hand, the switch grip technique. This video was recorded shortly after I started using that particular technique. The main idea behind this one is that I'm constantly switching back and forth between German and French grip every couple of bars. This way I'm always switching between different muscle groups in my forearm and upper arm, and this radically increases my endurance and helps me play relaxed and without extra tension at higher tempos. Let's do this short example real quick. You can do this one at home as well, and you don't even need sticks for this little exercise. What I want you to do is place your hand on your practice pad, or if you don't have a practice pad, place them on your table or on your legs. Now I want you to start playing unison eighth notes at a tempo of 120 beats per minute for 8 bars straight. Make sure that you are just using the muscles in your forearms, just a full wrist motion. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try to hit as hard as possible. 5, 6, 7, 8. Done. At the end of those 8 bars, I'm sure you felt some tension in your forearms already. Now let's repeat the same exercise again, unison eighth notes on your pad. But what I want you to do right now is that after 2 bars of German grip, I want you to change your hand position. Bring your hands together and generate each stroke by a wrist turning motion, just like that. So you're going to use the German grip for the first 2 bars, then French grip for 2 bars, followed by German grip again for 2 bars, and then French grip again. Okay, let's try that one right away. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and switch. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, done. Alright, I hope you already felt the difference and the increase in endurance. Since you're switching from a wrist up and down motion to a wrist turning motion every 2 bars, you just radically improve your endurance. So now let's talk about the big mistake I made back in the days when I started using the switch grip technique. In German grip, I always used a mix of wrist and fingers. So the back of my hand is facing up and I'm using an up and down motion from my wrist, and my fingers are also assisting this motion. That works perfectly fine. But the big mistake I made was that once I switched to French grip, I just used my fingers without the wrist turning motion. So my French grip looked basically like this. But actually it should look like this, a wrist turning motion plus fingers. The way I played the French grip worked fine on my snare drum since I got lots of rebound there. But as soon as I switched to tom fills, I lost power, and that's the reason why I think that my tom fills sounded really bad back in the days. One more thing I have to add is that I prefer to use French grip when I play tom fills, and the reason for that is the following. In German grip I got a 70 to 90 degree angle between my sticks in my right and my left hand. This is perfectly fine when I play on just a snare drum, for example. But as soon as I move around the drum kit, and especially at tom fills, there's a high chance of hitting one stick with the other while moving around on the toms during faster single stroke fills. This was also the reason why I lost sticks from time to time while performing tom fills. So basically I prefer to use the French grip on tom fills because in French grip my sticks end up being parallel and it's almost impossible to hit one stick with the other during tom fills. But again, since I just used my fingers in French grip, my tom fills sounded terrible. I didn't have enough power by just using my fingers. One last thing I have to add regarding the switch grip technique. That's for everyone who wants to work on that technique. This one is only as strong as its weakest link. This means that if you're able to play up to 260 in German grip, for example, and only 210 in French grip, then 210 BPM is gonna be your maximum tempo, and you're gonna have to spend some extra time getting your French grip up to speed. Alright, let's continue. Here you can see that I lose power during the tom fill, so they sound really bad right here. Here's another big weak spot in my playing. I wasn't able to play a clean transition between mid-tempo or up-tempo double bass down to slower double bass. Back in the days I used just my hip flexors for slower double bass parts. For example, I used to just play 2-foot blasts back in the days, so 16th notes with my hands and 8th notes, slow 8th notes with my feet. For mid-tempos and faster double bass, I switched to just using my calf muscles like this. The big problem I had back in the days was that I wasn't able to switch between those two muscle groups. So every time I switched from fast double bass to slow double bass, I started to tense up and didn't perform a tight transition. And that's exactly what you can see in this video. As soon as I switch from the 8th note triplet double bass part to the 8th note double bass, I tense up and the transition between those two note rates is not tight at all. Alright, let's watch that one again. What I did to solve this problem is that I just changed to the ankle technique for slower double bass as well. So my foot technique at slow tempos is basically the same as it is in medium or up tempo double bass parts. I generate each stroke by my calf muscles. This way it's totally easy to switch from slow to mid tempos to fast double bass. Alright, let's continue. As you can see in the bottom right video, I always placed my spare sticks between my upper leg and the drum stool. Somehow that was the easiest way for me to grab a spare stick as quickly as possible if I lose one stick while I'm playing. Here you can see that the stick height always stays the same, even if I have to play for longer periods of time. That's the great advantage of the switch grip technique. Once you got it down, your endurance just doubles immediately. So that's it for this short analysis. One thing I have to tell you after watching one of these old live videos again is the following. Although I don't really miss touring, I still feel that I had the time of my life back in the days. Touring the States was always my favorite part of the year. Great times. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks again for watching my stuff. I hope you enjoyed this one and maybe you could learn a thing or two from that video. Have a great day. Cheers from Vienna. Bye.